Why is she here? On my way home from work, I found a little girl rummaging through the trash bags outside a gas station and decided to adopt her and raise her myself. Adjusting to sudden parenthood, I collapsed at work. When my boss came to visit me at the hospital, she trembled upon seeing the girl. My name is Daniel. I'm a 32-year-old, working for a trading company in New York. I enjoyed my job, but it was so demanding that I didn't have a girlfriend for a while. And it looked like I would easily slip into my 40s as a single man. In the city, it was not unusual for men to remain single, so I had been living quite comfortably. Then, the other day at work, I was promoted for the achievements I had accumulated over time. Although it wasn't much reflected in my salary, the best reward was hearing from a colleague that my direct boss, Rachel, had praised me. She is 2 years older than me, a single woman with an exotic look, calm yet strong-willed. Born in the States with an American father and a Southeast Asian mother, she is a trilingual, fluent in English, her mother's native language, and Spanish. She's a high-caliber woman with deep knowledge of trade. Since she took her current position 2 years ago, I've been working with her and secretly admiring her. Many men in the office feel the same way about her, but Rachel, although friendly and cheerful, is considered out of reach due to her brilliance. One day, after several hours of overtime, I was heading home. Getting off at the nearest station, I decided to buy dinner at the most accessible large gas station on my way home. After paying, I heard a rustling sound from the trash area outside as I exited. Passing by, I wondered, is it an employee or perhaps a cat, and stopped to look. There, a young child was pulling a trash bag out from a slightly open storage shed door and rummaging through it. It was dark outside the store's lights, but I could see the child was preschool age, likely a girl. Dressed in a way that suggested she was living in poverty. In this age of abundance, I had never thought about a young child having to scavenge through trash, so I was momentarily stunned. Ah, there she is again. Suddenly, a gas station clerk appeared behind me, ran up to the child, and snatched the bag away. Next time you do this, I'm calling the police. The clerk scolded the girl and shooed her away. The girl, unable to get what she wanted, started to walk away slowly. I felt something welling up inside me as I looked at her small back and couldn't help but call out, "Wait! Would you like to eat this? I bought a little extra. It would help me out if you could eat it if you're hungry." She turned around, her face gaunt and expressionless, but I offered a burger I bought at the gas station with as gentle a voice as I could muster. "I think I'll have some coffee. Come on, let's sit here together." She eyed me warily but was evidently very hungry as she glanced at the burger. I sat down on a car stop in the empty parking space and placed the burger beside me. Slowly, she approached, sat on the car stop, and looked up at me again. I nodded to her. "Go ahead, don't be shy, eat." She clumsily began to take out the burger from the plastic bag, struggling to open the packaging with her small hands. Seeing her struggle, I reached out to help, but she quickly clutched the burger and glared at me. "I won't take it away. I'm just going to help you open it, let me help." She hesitantly handed me the burger, and I made it easier for her to eat. She then began to eat voraciously. Watching her, I felt that she hadn't received even the most basic education. Parents usually watch their children eat, teaching them how to hold utensils and chew properly, but she gulped down her food while still wary of me. Despite feeling pity for such a meal, I found myself thinking she looked like my younger sister. My sister had been frail since childhood, repeatedly hospitalized. She managed to make it through the 9th grade but passed away dreaming of enjoying high school life, filled with romance and student activities. Remembering her frail body in times when she couldn't eat by herself, I felt a sense of life in this child, even though she looked frail. The store clerk said again, "Do you come here often?" I asked the girl, who had finished her meal, about something that had been on my mind. After handing her a juice I bought from a vending machine, her stomach full and her wariness lessened, she nodded slightly. As I patiently asked her more, she started to respond little by little. She wasn't much of a talker, but her name was Sophia, and she was 4 years old. Apparently, she lives nearby but was unable to eat or play satisfactorily for some reason. Since it was late, I decided to walk Sophia home. When I offered my hand, she held it obediently. Following her directions, we arrived at a foster care facility. At the night entrance, no one was around, and just as I was wondering what to do, a tired-looking middle-aged woman who seemed to be a staff member appeared. After I explained the situation, she thanked me and tried to take Sophia, but she clung to my hand and wouldn't let go. She was silent but seemed to be pleading with me as she looked up. I didn't know the right words, but I stroked her head with my other hand and said, "See you again." Sophia nodded, and the staff member led her away into the building. Since then, Sophia has started waiting for me at that gas station. I tell her each time that I don't always pass by at the same time and that it's dangerous to sneak out, but she insists. While eating her food, Sophia says that she doesn't fit in the facility for being small and quiet. As a result, her meals are often stolen, and her few possessions are dirted or hidden. The staff, managing dozens of children with minimal staff, can't intervene unless it's a life or death issue. While her appearance hasn't changed much, I've noticed more expressions on Sophia's face since she started seeing me. I see movements of her cheeks that resemble smiles, reminding me even more of my sister when she was young. I've grown attached to her, but unsure of what to do. I've just continued the routine of feeding her at the gas station and walking her back to the facility. On a weekday that was a holiday due to my company's founding anniversary, I decided to visit the facility. I had only seen it at night, so I was curious about how Sophia was doing during the day. As I watched from outside, I saw children playing in the yard, but she was nowhere in sight. Maybe she was playing inside. Then she came out holding sand play tools. But a group of children, led by a boy, suddenly surrounded her. From their expressions, they seemed to be taunting her and took away her toys. She looked resigned and didn't resist, but the boy who appeared to be the leader stomped on the toys, breaking them. Then another boy, bringing a staff member, pointed at her and said something. The staff member scolded her with an annoyed look. "Why don't you take care of things? Everyone is upset because you keep breaking them." Hearing the scolding, I couldn't stay still and ran up, joining the group around Sophia. "That's not true. I saw everything that happened from over there." I explained the situation, and the staff member sighed, merely telling the boys not to play tricks before leaving. I was angry there was no apology to Sophia for the misunderstanding. Turning to the boys with a displeased look, I tried to look as intimidating as possible. "Boys, you are supposed to protect girls, especially those smaller than yourself. A true gentleman protects everyone, no matter if they are boys or girls." When I advised him so, a boy who seemed to be the leader snorted and retorted. "My dad hits my mom and says women are stupid and need to be disciplined. Did your mom seem happy being treated that way? Does being hit for discipline make you like that person?" The boy fell silent at my question. I took Sophia's hand, who was standing behind me. We sat side by side on the swing in the corner of the garden, and I began to ask her about what she usually does, what she likes, and what she dislikes. As I posed questions, she answered them. I realized that she spoke much more than when we first met, yet she still didn't initiate conversation or assert herself. Watching the earlier incident, I felt she had resigned herself to her life circumstances despite her young age. As I looked at the boys still glaring at us, I strongly felt that something had to change. It seemed dangerous for Sophia to continue staying in this facility, and I became deeply concerned about her future, especially since she had just started to smile. After telling Sophia I was leaving, I secretly went to speak with a staff member to learn about her family and how she ended up at the facility. Initially, the staff member refused to share the information due to privacy concerns and work regulations. But when I mentioned that I would hire a private investigator if necessary and discuss the implications of the earlier incident and Sophia's nightly escapes, he reluctantly shared the gist. Sophia was originally the eldest daughter of a wealthy family. After she was born, her mother, thought unable to have more children, gave birth to a son. As a result, Sophia gradually lost her place in the family and was one day brought to the facility because her parents could not feel affection for her. Coming from a financially privileged background, the baby boy held by his mother was plump and cheerful, but Sophia, standing alone behind her parents, was noticeably thin, her clothes and shoes ill-fitting, a clear sign of neglect. Her parents, without a word to Sophia, left relieved, as if they had just completed a task. Hearing this, I felt a mix of boiling anger and tearful sympathy remembering Sophia's awkward smiles. Upon returning home, I immediately contacted a friend knowledgeable about welfare to see how I could improve her situation. Though my options were limited, I decided to commit to doing whatever I could for her. Meeting her felt like a necessary event to resolve my feelings of regret and guilt over my sister, who died just when life was beginning for her. I applied for the foster care program, which a friend told me I could do as a single person, and continued to interact with Sophia as usual. And continued to make my presence known to the apathetic staff. Though I couldn't request a specific child, our bond strengthened, and my watchful presence seemed to improve how others treated her. Months later. Although my foster registration was complete, it wasn't guaranteed that Sophia would be placed with me, but I was prepared to wait. However, unexpectedly, help was offered. It seems that the weary staff member had spoken to the child welfare office, and permission was granted to gradually start taking care of Sophia. Beginning with a few days of overnight stays. I had not talked to Sophia about my foster parenting plans until then. I didn't want her to experience any more disappointment if things didn't work out after raising her hopes. Trying to contain my excitement, I suggested she come for a sleepover, and Sophia, after a puzzled look, silently turned to look up at the staff member. When the staff member smiled and nodded, color slowly returned to Sophia's pale face, turning it a rosy hue. And her eyes sparkled as she looked at me. Without words, her elated feelings were more eloquent than any expression I'd seen on her before. Following that trial sleepover, we gradually extended her stays, and she began to live with me. Having lived a typically disorganized bachelor's life, I barely cooked, and only cleaned and did laundry when absolutely necessary. Though I had improved somewhat for the foster care interviews and visits, my skills were admittedly makeshift. There were times we sat dejected in front of a burnt pot, hungry, and once when she tripped over a vacuum cleaner cord and bled from her forehead. I almost fainted from shock. In the mornings, I got up early to make breakfast for her and take her to the daycare center before heading to work. In the evenings, I rushed to pick her up and we ate dinner together. Afterward, I bathed her, put her to bed, and then tackled my work brought home. Amid this hectic but fulfilling life, and still busy with work after my promotion, I eventually collapsed from exhaustion at work. Waking up in the hospital, I reflected on my daily routine, realizing I needed to manage my time better. The doctor confirmed it was due to overwork and said I could go home after my 4 treatment but warned me to be careful. Just then, Rachel entered my hospital room, looking slightly pale. I apologized for the inconvenience at work, but she interrupted, seemingly distracted. I asked HR, and I've contacted a relative. I recently updated that, did they get through? My parents are still alive but live far away. Sophia would be the most affected by anything that happened to me. So I had made the daycare center my emergency contact. Rachel was about to respond when Sophia burst into the room. Her cheeks were a bit plumper, but she still had tears in her big eyes as she hugged me. Sorry, did I scare you? As I stroked her head, Sophia murmured, yeah, burying her face in my stomach, sobbing quietly. I thanked the daycare worker who accompanied her, and they wished me well before leaving. I thanked Rachel again, but instead of her usual crisp demeanor, she hesitated, starting to say something then stopping, looking troubled. Rachel? As I asked with a puzzled face, she snapped back to reality and hurried back home. I was concerned about Rachel's strange behavior, but my attention soon returned to Sophia, who wouldn't stop crying. I decided to take a few days off to rest. Sophia, terrified of losing me, took a break from the daycare to stay with me. Right after Sophia fell asleep for her nap, Rachel came to visit. She said she desperately needed to talk, so I agreed to listen while Sophia was asleep. Rachel, looking a bit worn, spoke with a trembling voice about her painful past. In her late 20s, Rachel had a fiancé she had promised her future to. He was the son of a company president, wealthy but unpretentious, and admired Rachel, a Southeast Asian mix often looked down upon. Calling her an international talent and passionately wooing her. Feeling so desired, she accepted his proposal. They exchanged engagement rings, greeted each other's parents, and were just steps away from the wedding and registration when her pregnancy came to light, much to the delight of both families. However, her fiancé, who had been in daily contact, suddenly went silent for a week. Worried, Rachel went to his house only to find him with another woman. Unbeknownst to Rachel, he originally had an approved lover of similar social standing. But they had parted ways because she had difficulty conceiving. Nevertheless, the ex-girlfriend and her fiancé continued to meet regularly, and upon learning of Rachel's pregnancy, the ex wanted the child and sought reconciliation. He unilaterally called off the engagement, telling Rachel, I feel there's a difference in our backgrounds after all. Then, he made a bold proposal, coming from his ex-lover. Rachel, shocked, firmly refused, but he knew her weakness. At that time, her mother was suffering from terminal cancer and wished to return to her homeland to die. However, her father was a factory worker with no savings, and her salary was spent on living expenses, making it difficult to fulfill her mother's last wish. He brought up the matter and offered assistance if she would agree to give the child to them. Rachel agonized until the last moment before giving birth. Considering her mother's wish and the child's chance to live comfortably, she tearfully agreed to relinquish her child. Afterwards, they quickly married, took the child, and upon paying Rachel, forced her to sign an agreement not to claim motherhood. Rachel told me that her marriage had failed and that she had a stillbirth, and with the money she received, she went to her mother's homeland with her parents. The only consolation was that her mother passed away peacefully back home. I was speechless at such a sad and terrible story. Yet, why she was telling me this story was unclear, and my confusion must have shown on my face. While looking at my face, she let a tear fall and said, "The child I gave birth to was a girl. As the first and last gift to my mother, I named her Sophia. The girl in this house. She is the child I gave birth to and had to give up." After that, we talked for a long time. The first day we spoke, I was too upset, so I had her leave before Sophia woke up. We discussed many times afterward, prioritizing Sophia's feelings and deciding not to disturb her newfound stability. Rachel introduced herself as my friendly boss and someone Sophia had met at the hospital, setting a pretext for future visits. This way, gradually introducing Rachel's presence might be easier on Sophia, and it would fulfill Rachel's wish to bond with her daughter. Rachel knew somewhat about Sophia's arrival at this house, but I explained the circumstances in detail. Rachel was furious at her ex-fiancé's selfish actions and was moved to tears by the story of my meeting Sophia. She was so comforted by Sophia, who came to check on her, that she ended up crying even more. At first, Sophia tended to cling to me or, conversely, keep her distance when she began living with us. But now she speaks more clearly and voices her desires and needs. The written pledge that Rachel was forced to sign by her former fiancés became invalid when they renounced their parental rights. And I think it's fine for Rachel to reclaim her name someday. When I told Rachel and Sophia that I wanted to help them in any way I could after all they had been through, Rachel looked at me curiously. "Why would you treat us so well when we're just strangers to you?" Having become a regular visitor, I saw a side of her not shown at work. She was shy and admitted to being timid due to past experiences. I had a sister 2 years younger than me. She was frail and the hospital was like a second home for her. When I first saw the skinny Sophia, she reminded me of the last time I saw my sister. She was 15 but looked like an elementary schooler. Despite her condition, she'd smile wistfully at the romance comics I brought, wishing to experience love. I was moody then, monopolized by my sister's needs and always grumpy. I told her, "No guy would bother with a skeleton like you. No one wants such a burden." That was our last conversation. She smiled sadly, agreeing. Later that night, the call came. By the time my parents and I arrived, she was unconscious. I couldn't even hold her hand or call her name, let alone promise her future loves. That's what I've regretted deeply ever since. Rachel silently grasped my hand laid on the table. Taking a deep breath, I continued. That's why, reminded of my sister by Sophia, I vowed never to have such regrets again, doing anything I can. Perhaps it's all for myself. After all. Me too. Rachel shook her head and responded. At the time, she thought she was making the decision for Sophia's sake, and for her mother's, but on reflection, it feels as though she sold her daughter to people who lacked integrity and morals, making her bear all the consequences, which fills her with guilt and self-reproach. Through sharing our past mistakes and watching over Sophia as she began to develop normal emotions, Rachel and I gradually came to see each other not as subordinate and boss, but as partners. On the day Sophia started elementary school, the little girl with the brand new school bag looked tiny, her belongings more prominent than her. But her healthy red cheeks and well-nourished limbs showed no signs of malnutrition. "Dad, does it suit me?" With a shy smile, she asked, and I honestly replied, "It suits you very well. Red really suits you." Then, from behind, a voice critiqued my choice, saying, "Dad is so old-fashioned." saying girls should wear red, modern school bags or green or yellow, colorful ones. Sophia smiled at the voice's owner and said, "I also love the pink shoes Mom chose for me." As the woman referred to as Mom, my boss and now wife, looked proudly at me. We had gotten married 6 months ago. Following that, we formally adopted Sophia, who now candidly calls us Dad and Mom. They say a child's year feels longer than an adult's. I don't know how much Sophia remembers or understands about the family she had before the facility, but I hope, as her parents, our love will be fully received and she grows into a confident woman who feels loved. Maybe one day, she'll experience the kind of love my sister spoke of. As a father, it's a bittersweet thought, but if that's part of life, then so be it. Watching the backs of my wife and daughter as they walked hand in hand to school, I was immersed in these happy yet poignant sentiments amidst the rows of trees.